Crystal, what are you taking a look at?
I don't think we've fully processed how extraordinary and how dire the circumstances facing the Democratic Party are right now. A midterm drubbing in which they lose both chambers is all but guaranteed. They hold the White House, and yet almost no one really believes the old man at Pennsylvania Avenue right now is actually going to go for it again, nor does anyone believe that if he does go for it again, that he is actually well positioned to win. The handpicked successor to Biden has proven herself to be completely unelectable and an even worse choice to beat Trump than the flagging Biden. And while Slimy Pete plots on the sidelines with big donor backers, Dem insiders cannot figure out how to move the black female vice president out of the way without facing a revolt and being called both racist and sexist. Not that it is at all clear that Pete would be any better shape electorally than either Biden or Kamala. Have you considered how most black people feel about that man? In other words, Dem elites have caught themselves in a trap entirely of their own making. After all, they wanted Biden, they picked Kamala, they leaned into representation-only identity politics, and crucially, they have gone out of their way to crush anything outside of the Mayo-Pete brand of status quo politics. That's the backdrop for a dishy new piece from New York Magazine, which plumbs the depths of Democratic despair and backbiting. Now, the headline here really captures the angst, quote, "There has to be a backup plan. There's a backup plan, right?" Inside the 2024 soul-searching that is happening in every corner of the Democratic Party. Now, the piece admits that Washington insiders are just as skeptical as the general public about whether Biden will actually attempt a second go-round, and the general public is plenty skeptical. Only 29% of voters are convinced that Biden is going to run again, in spite of his assurances to the contrary. This skepticism extends from the general population to regular rank-and-file Democrats, a majority of whom remain unconvinced that he will be on the ticket in 2024. That insider skepticism is fueled in part by Biden himself, who famously framed his presidency as a bridge to the future, by which he meant candidates like Pete Buttigieg, who have the same bad-old ideas, just in a younger body. Now, the article doesn't mention it, but it's not clear that even if Biden decides he's up for another go-round, the Democratic voters themselves are going to back him. A CNN poll earlier this year found majority support for a Biden alternative. Only 45% of party backers want to see him renominated. Now, it is impossible to overstate just how extraordinary it is for the sitting incumbent president to be so thoroughly rejected by his own party's voters. But the electability standard set up by the Democratic establishment ultimately cuts both ways. Dem voters have been primed to care only about electability to the exclusion of any actual principle or issue. That's how we ended up with Biden in the first place. Now that his political fortunes are on the rocks, those same electability-focused voters, well, they can read the polls, and they see they might be better off with a different horse. After all, it's not like they've been encouraged to participate in a broader political project, something worth fighting for outside of which candidates are up or down in the polls. They have been drilled repeatedly on the idea that the only thing that matters, to the exclusion of all else, is beating Trump. So it makes plenty of sense that they'd have no qualms about abandoning this guy who's turned out to be a very poor and very unpopular president for someone they think might better fit their electability over everything model. The question, of course, is who? There's one person who is obviously not an improvement on the electability front, and that would be Kamala Harris. So dumb are the party elders that they have handpicked a successor who had already proven to be a total electoral flop. But her trailblazing identity, the very resume item she was selected for, has proven to be like handcuffs for the party, preventing them from anointing a different successor and risk being branded as racist and sexist by the K-Hive types. Biden himself has clearly soured on his Veep. This article reveals that their weekly lunches, modeled on the Obama-Biden relationship, quickly dropped down to bi-weekly lunches, and so far this year, they have only managed to dine together twice. The concern over Biden's physical and electoral capabilities, combined with the manifest shortcomings of Kamala Harris, have provoked a full-on donor class freakout. Again, according to New York Magazine, quote, "Several of the party's largest donors have bombarded Obama's old associates with pleas for insight into some sort of top-secret real plan that must exist for the next presidential contest. Spoiler alert, there is no top-secret real plan. Just hope that things will magically improve or that Biden can pull off what Macron did in France, winning re-election in spite of most of the public hating him, because the alternative is even worse." As one former Biden aide explained, quote, "We've done this before. Yeah, everything seems bad, but when it's game time and you've got a fascist up there, everyone will say, 'Let's do this.'" And that refrain right there is as perfect a summation as you could possibly get of exactly how Democrats found themselves in this disastrous predicament. Facing down an opposition party elite that does have extreme views and actual conspiracy lunatics and white nationalists and unable to do a damn thing about it. Because they'd rather keep their little power-hungry grift going and then tell everyone they had no choice but to back them because of the fascists than let in any new blood with any different ideas and not completely beholden to the disgusting, grotesque corporate alliance. You want to know where the future of the Democratic Party is? It is being crushed systematically in primaries across the country under the weight of millions of dollars in races like the one that Jessica Cisneros looks set to narrowly lose. Nina Turner here is a perfect example. Listen. Put aside whatever you think of her politics. You will not find a more talented, charismatic orator and inspirational figure in the country. But instead of allowing her primary last cycle to unfold naturally and district voters to make their choice, the establishment pulled out every trick in the book to bring her down. So now, instead of the talented Nina Turner, they end up with the mediocre, forgettable Shontel Brown, whose only job is to recite the prescribed talking points and fall in line. Cultivating the bland and the milquetoast has literally been the explicit project of the Democratic Party for decades. They tried to force a union-busting nobody Steve Irwin through a primary to defeat the passionate electric Summer Lee. They literally wanted the most underwhelming person in history, Connor Lamb, over the gregarious, prototypical working-class everyman, John Fetterman. Their recruitment focused heavily on the fabulously wealthy and rich lawyers for the sole reason that these are the people who can most easily tap personal wealth and personal network wealth to line the pockets of the consultant class. So why should anyone be surprised that their most inspiring offering is a McKinsey ghoul who has never believed a single thing in his entire life? The Democratic Party is a factory. People like Mayor Pete are the product. Anything that doesn't fit in that model is a threat and must be taken out back and shot. And then they all stand around and fantasize about a candidate with the charisma of, say, a cucumber instead of a jar of mayonnaise, and panic about the utter dearth of talent that would lead you to believe that a declining 82-year-old man is still your best political player. You people made your mediocre, out-of-touch, values-free bed. Unfortunately, it's all the rest of us who are going to have to lay in it. And Saagar, this piece is extraordinary because it shows cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.